Hi, I'm David Valdez, and I teach AP Human Geography at Cherry Creek High School in Greenwood Village, Colorado. Today's video will discuss how forms of governments include unitary states and federal states. What will we learn today? Well, governments are either unitary or federal in their power structure. This means that unitary states have a strong centralized government structure, which means that power is concentrated in a national assembly inside of a national capital city. Federal states have decentralized government structures, and that means power is shared between a national assembly inside of a national capital and local assemblies that are located inside of local capital cities. When we're talking about unitary states, unitary governments hold almost all authority. Very little power is actually given to a local government. The central government is going to be the government that makes nearly all the laws. Laws and policies of the central government are then applied uniformly throughout the country to the local governments. Central governments can create or abolish local government units, so these units are not necessarily permanent. And the central government then provides many public services such as healthcare, public schools, and more. Unitary governments are established because a country's population is very homogeneous, which means that everybody is pretty much the same, or if the country is geographically small. Examples include the United Kingdom, France, China, and many others. Some of the positive impacts of unitary governments are the creation of a national identity and patriotic pride, which then reduces the potential for devolution. Laws and policies of a unitary government can be implemented faster and more efficiently because there are fewer groups in between. And the potential for corruption at a local level is reduced greatly because the policies are established at the national level. Negative impacts of unitary governments include things like the fact that minority governments and even local cultures are often marginalized or their concerns are not addressed. The local areas can be ignored by the central government, and local needs may not be met by the centralized government, leaving local areas in a lurch. Laws and policies can be dominated by the interests of the dominant cultural group if they don't take care of local cultures and minority groups. In a federal government, the government will share political power with local levels of governments. The central government or the national government will make some laws, but most laws are passed at the state level. Laws and policies will differ between jurisdictions, which means that different states can pass different types of laws that will differ from place to place to place. And the central government cannot create or abolish local government units. So that means that once a state is established or a province is established, those provinces or states will continue to exist until the government falls apart or something. I don't know. Local governments provide most public services, and that is going to be true because the local governments will provide public schooling, policing, laws, a whole bunch of different social services that are a part of daily life. Federal governments are established because the country's population is heterogeneous. There's a lot of different types of cultures there, a lot of different people there, or the country is geographically large. Examples include the United States, Canada, Australia, and a few others. Some positive impacts of federal governments include the fact that laws and policies are created with local interests in mind. People at the local level are making laws for themselves, which means that they can address their needs the most. Local governments can react faster in times of an emergency. If a local government has to wait for the national government to act, they could lose precious time and money. And lastly, minority groups are allowed to maintain their identity and culture more easily. Negative impacts of federal governments include the fact that provincial or local governments have different laws and policies across the country. The redundancy in governments makes implementations of laws and policies very slow as the different levels of government have to interact with each other. And the potential for devolutionary forces to gain acceptance is actually greater in a federal government than it is in a centralized government. Let's practice. Political geographers classify most countries as either unitary states or federal states. A. Define unitary state and identify the country shown that fits the definition of the unitary state. B. Explain one positive and one negative impact of a unitary system. C. Identify and explain one reason why some countries are governed as federal states. The answer to A is a unitary state is a state that has a strong centralized government with weak localized governments. The country shown here that fits that particular definition is Japan. One positive effect or one positive impact of a unitary system could be the fact that a unitary system reduces the potential for local corruption. One negative impact of a unitary system is that a dominant culture may pass laws and policies that benefit only them. And one reason why some countries are governed as federal states is because the state is very large and it makes it hard for the government to control the entire government at the same time, the entire country at the same time, which makes it easier for the local governments to assume some of that political control. What should we take away? Well, country governments structures are generally classified as either unitary or federal. Each type of government administers laws and policies differently from a geographical perspective. So it's your job as a geographer to understand the impact that the government structure has on the cohesiveness and the political governance of the state. Thank you.
Hello and welcome back. I'm Ms. Patel, coming to you from Silver Spring, Maryland, and today we will be talking about topic 4.8, defining devolutionary factors. So, first we need to remind ourselves what devolution is. There's many different ways that you could define this, but it could be the breaking up of a state into other multiple states, or the passing of power downwards from the central government to lower forms of government, maybe making an autonomous region, or just splitting up the state a little bit with passing power downward. There's a lot of examples of this we've learned throughout the Unit 4 videos, so I won't be going into each of these, but some of those examples are in Spain with Catalonia and Basque, Yugoslavia, which I'll be talking more about in this video. Quebec and Nunavut in Canada were both given more autonomy due to the unique groups of people there. And ones we didn't really talk about too much are also Belgium and Nigeria. So there's a lot of things that can cause devolution in a state, and they are called devolutionary factors. One of those things is divisions of groups by physical geography. Another is ethnic separatism or ethnic cleansing. There's also other things that we'll be learning in the next video on this topic. So today we're going to focus on those first three that are bolded on the screen. Another important thing to remember is there's often not just one of these happening, it's a combination of many different factors that contribute to the current world map, the political borders all over the world, which can change at any moment given something that happens. Another important thing here is that the important skill is to be able to use a map or some kind of geographic data to explain what is happening, which you'll see a little bit in this video. So let's look at examples. First, we have situations where a group is divided by physical geography. So that could be literally that there's some kind of physical barrier, like that group is on an island by themselves or they're isolated in the mountains. It could also be just the distance decay effect at work, that the country is so large that it's too hard for certain areas of the country or certain groups that are farther from the cities or the main government area to get to what they need. So it could just divide that group physically. An example of this would be the Basque people. So they are a unique ethnic group that has been kind of isolated in the mountains in the north of Spain. It's the green area on the map. And because of that, they have their own language, they have their own culture, and they basically, that kind of pushes them to want their own country or at least more autonomy because they've been divided by physical geography for so long. Another example is ethnic separatism. So this is when there's many ethnic groups in a country, and one of those ethnic groups kind of wants more political power, whether that means completely separating from the country or just kind of wants to gain more autonomy. There's a lot of examples of this, some of which we've gone into, like the Basque, Catalans, and the Kurds. Remember, the Kurds are in the Middle East, and it's this picture to the right on the screen where they are stuck in Turkey, Syria, Iran, and Iraq. And they've always kind of wanted to separate from all of those countries to make their own state. One that we have not talked about before is South Ossetia and Abkhazia, who want to separate from Georgia. So this is in the left picture, and these are both small areas that have basically declared their independence from Georgia, and with the support of Russia and Russian troops, have continued to try to maintain their independence. Georgia does not recognize them as independent states, and very few other countries do as well. But it's a great example of ethnic separatism, that those unique ethnic groups feel they deserve their own country and their independence. And ethnic cleansing can also be a devolutionary factor. This is as bad as it sounds. This is the deliberate removal or killing of a particular ethnic group, which obviously could cause a country to break apart or some kind of power to be passed downward. Sadly, there are a lot of examples of this. One of them is Yugoslavia, that I will explain using a map on the next slide. Another that most of us are very aware of is the Holocaust, with the killing of the Jewish people, and the Rwandan genocide, where the Hutus were killing the Tutsis for the most part. The Rohingya is another more recent example to talk about, and that's what these pictures are of. So the Rohingya are a unique Muslim ethnic group that live in Myanmar, and they basically have been persecuted by that government and the military in that country for a long time. But more recently, in 2017, the government kind of directed their removal, or at least the military did. And that caused this massive refugee crisis, and they all went across the border to Bangladesh. Hundreds of thousands of people left the country to try to go into Bangladesh. So that's obviously going to cause issues within a country, potentially break a country apart because of the ethnic cleansing. Another one to know is Yugoslavia. Part of why that country eventually split apart into what it is today in this picture was ethnic cleansing. It was mainly the Serbian forces that were killing Bosnian Muslims, among many other war casualties. But to this day, the Bosnian Muslim population is much lower than it would have been without that ethnic cleansing. And this animation shows you the devolution that basically resulted as a part of that and many other things. So Yugoslavia looked like this, and then over time, it slowly broke apart. So this is a great example of devolution, and remember the term balkanization is important here, the splitting up of one country into many. See, it's a very complicated split up of this country until what it eventually was, or what it is today for the most part. And it still might change from then on. That's the thing with devolution, is there's all these factors happening at any one point. It could cause change very quickly. Let's practice this with a multiple choice example. So in this question, it's asking you, it says the Canadian government created a new territory of Nunavut in order to. So this is considered in this part of the unit because that territory was a devolutionary pressure, giving them more autonomy. So they did this in order to recognize the territorial rights of the indigenous people in the area, the Inuit people. One more example is an FRQ that's actually one of the tougher FRQs I've seen in the past few years. So of course, first they want you to define devolution, which we should be able to do now. There's many valid ways to explain it, some kind of passing power downward or the breaking up of a state. And then we're not going to do the whole thing here because I will finish this in the next video, in video 2. But we can now explain part 1 and 2 of part B, where we can explain that cultural diversity could cause ethnic separatism or ethnic cleansing, which could contribute to a country breaking apart, or at least being certain areas of the country being given more autonomy. And then we have the physical geography factor too, that a group could just be simply separated from the rest of the country, and that could cause devolution of some kind. We will finish the rest of this FRQ in the next video. So what should we take away? You definitely need to know the definition of devolution. It comes up a lot. And knowing that it doesn't just mean a country breaking apart, it's just passing of power downward, whether that means fully breaking apart or just being given more autonomy or passing more power downward. Any of those cover devolution. And there's many factors that can lead to this, including the 3 we learned about today: divisions of groups by physical geography, ethnic separatism, and ethnic cleansing. Be really good at knowing examples of each of these and be able to do what I just did, where you could explain it using a map or geographic data. Remember to always go out and find the good in the world, and thank you for listening. Hello and welcome back. I'm Ms. Patel, coming to you from Silver Spring, Maryland, and today we will continue talking about topic 4.8, defining devolutionary factors. So just like we started off the last video, let's just remind ourselves what devolution is. Some kind of breaking up of a state into smaller states or smaller, maybe gaining autonomous regions, or just simply the passing of power from central to lower governments. There's a lot of different examples, some of which we will go into today, such as in Spain, Yugoslavia, Canada, Belgium, or Nigeria. So let's get more into this. Devolutionary factors consist of a lot of things, some of which we learned last video with the 3 that are on the screen, with divisions of groups by physical geography, ethnic separatism, and ethnic cleansing. Today, we will continue to learn about devolutionary factors in the form of terrorism, economic and social problems, and irredentism. Remember that these and many other factors kind of combine together to make what is today's political geography map of the world. And it can change at any moment. Also remember, the key skill here is to be able to use a map or geographic data to explain one of these examples, just like what I'm going to do for you in this video. So let's look at examples of each of these. First, we have terrorism, which can be defined many different ways, and sometimes the definition is kind of argued, but it's usually considered to be some kind of violence that's organized by a specific group for political aims, and it's often therefore aimed at citizens to incite terror. As you can see by this map of where terrorism is happening in the world, there's a lot going on that are considered terrorist acts, terrorism all over the world right now. And obviously any place that's dealing with some kind of violence would be a factor in potentially splitting that country up or changing the way the power system works in that country. So terrorism clearly could cause devolution in a lot of places, especially the ones that are highlighted in this map. Another factor of devolution is economic and social problems. So there could be some kind of social issue between different ethnic groups, but I'm going to focus on the economic part of this since we've already kind of talked about ethnicity and how that can cause a place to split apart. So if there's an economic problem, there's 2 good examples here: Catalonia, Spain, and Scotland, UK. The economic problems can consist of different things. So for example, in Scotland, UK, part of the reason there was a vote in Scotland for a referendum of independence was because a lot of the Scottish people do not believe that Brexit is a good decision for their country. So that's an economic issue that Scotland does not agree with. Catalonia is a little bit different. They kind of consider themselves to be the stronger part of the Spanish economy, but don't think that they don't feel fully compensated with the public services they're given due to the fact that they produce a lot of the GDP, they're a lot of the economic wealth of the country. So that can obviously cause pressures for a place to be given more autonomy or some kind of breaking up of the state. And another devolutionary factor is irredentism. This is a movement by a nation to unite other parts of its nation that are spread across other borders. So that's where things get complicated because it could pull apart that other country. One example of this is China's claim over Taiwan. Since China considers its people to have left its country and gone to Taiwan to make that country, that's sort of a legitimate claim to them, right? So that could cause devolutionary pressures in either China or Taiwan. Another similar example is Russia's claim over Crimea in Ukraine. You can scan that QR code to watch a video that explains that a little bit more, but very similarly, it can obviously cause some kind of devolutionary pressure in Ukraine or Russia. So let's practice this with a FRQ. This is the same FRQ that we looked at last time, and it's a complicated one, so make sure if you want to pause it, look at the maps a little more. This one's a tough question for sure. So the one that we did not look at was part 2 of part B because we had not learned this yet, but now we can definitely answer this. So we have to describe how regional economic differences could contribute as a devolutionary pressure in a country. And you could think of Catalonia, Spain, that I just explained, that if there's certain areas that feel they're producing more for the economy and not receiving some kind of compensation for that, that could cause a country to split apart or an area of the country to want more autonomy. The most complicated part of this question is part C, where it wants you to identify and explain one political impact from devolutionary pressures that relate to cultural differences in either Spain or Nigeria. So this is the exact skill I was telling you need to be good at doing, where you're given a map or some kind of geographic data and you use it to answer a question. This is a perfect example of that. Let's pick Spain since we've been talking about this, so we have more background here. You could explain something about cultural differences between the Basque or Catalans in the area. They feel they have a unique culture, unique language. That could cause a lot of political things to happen, such as maybe pushing for independence and having maybe a violent separatist movement. So any of those would be valid answers to explain, given that they feel they could separate due to their unique culture. So what should we take away from all of this? Remember the definition of devolution for sure, that it's the breaking up of a state or the passing of power downward from the federal government to lower levels of government, such as making autonomous regions. And remember that there's a lot of factors that go into this, including terrorism, economic and social problems, and irredentism. Be good at knowing examples of each of them and be able to explain it using a map, just like we did in that FRQ. I know this topic has been a little bit tough, but there is good in the world, I promise you. So go out and find the good in the world. And thank you for listening.